Her name was Marie, and without her, I don't know what would have happened next. I stared at Marie, not sure if I should ask her to go away or beg her for help. Her weathered face was creased with concern. "You all right, Mom?" she asked. My throat was dry, and the words caught in my mouth like sandpaper. Finally, I croaked out, "I'm pregnant," surprised by how strange it sounded. Pregnant. One single word holding so much hope and fear and exhaustion. "Okay," she said, her tone steady and strong. "What's your date?" My mind raced. Was it rude to ask a truck driver this? What did it mean if she refused to help? "August," I managed, reaching for my phone. "Call 911. I whispered. To my dismay, she shook her head. "No reception for miles around, ma'am. And cell service ain't always the best out here." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a silver whistle. I could see the concern etched on her face. "All right, Mom, I need you to sit still and listen to me. If you feel a contraction coming on, I want you to breathe deep and try to relax. I'll be right out front if you need me." She leaned back against the truck, her gaze unwavering. I watched her for a moment, trying to decipher the story in the lines on her face, the calluses on her hands, the quiet strength emanating from her frame. Who was she? Why was she helping me? Where was Caleb? Those questions swirled in my head like a bad acid trip, but I knew I needed to focus on the task at hand. Trust this woman who appeared out of nowhere, or trust no one. The choice was mine. As the minutes ticked by, I could feel the baby moving lower in my abdomen. Marie was right. I had to remain still and breathe. And then it hit me. My first real contraction. I bit my lip, bracing for the pain. It felt like someone had jammed a searing poker into my cervix. Sweat broke out on my upper lip, and my thighs trembled. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to follow Marie's instructions. The heat, the pain, the isolation pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. I had never experienced anything like this before. So primal, so uncontrollable, so undeniably powerful. I moaned. Marie was by my side in an instant, her presence a solid anchor in the roiling sea of my pain. "Easy, ma'am. You're doing great," she said, her voice firm yet soothing. "Just let nature do its work." Nature. Yes, I was giving birth in the middle of the desert, a long way from any hospital. But maybe that wasn't so bad. Maybe there was beauty in the rawness of it, in the utter vulnerability of the experience. I thought of my mother, her hand resting on my belly just a week ago, the ultrasound picture pinned to her refrigerator. Did she know what I was going through? Did she worry? Was she calling my number, punching buttons on her phone until her thumb bled? Maybe she was. Or maybe she was busy with her boyfriend, the one she never told me about, the one whose cologne still lingers on her pillow. How many secrets do mothers hold? How many futures do they plan for their children that have nothing to do with them? Sometimes I think our entire lives are an attempt to answer the question, what do you really want? It's the same question I asked myself when I packed my bag that morning. Did I want this baby? Did I want the life I was building with Caleb? And in that moment, cradled by the scorching heat and the ache in my gut, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that yes, I did. I wanted my baby. I wanted to be a mother. Then the second contraction hit, and I found myself screaming into the unforgiving sky. Somewhere deep inside me, I knew I was losing control. And in that terrifying knowledge, I also knew I was becoming something more. 20 minutes later, another contraction, then another. I closed my eyes, willing the pain to stop, but it only intensified. My body had become a vessel of pure sensation, no longer in control, no longer in charge. But then, amidst the chaos, I heard a new sound, a sound that stole the breath from my lungs and brought tears to my eyes. It was the cry of a baby girl. When I opened my eyes, I was met with the most extraordinary sight. There in the middle of that old Ford Explorer, swaddled in a blanket, was the most beautiful baby I had ever seen. She was lying on her back, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. And then she looked at me, her big blue eyes blinking sleepily, her little mouth curved into a perfect O. In that moment, I forgot the pain, the heat, the endless road. All that mattered was the miracle cradled in my arms, the miracle that was a part of me, and yet entirely her own. Ellie Rose Montgomery. I whispered her name, my voice hoarse with emotion. And as I looked into her fathomless eyes, I knew that everything I had endured, everything I would endure, was worth it for this moment, for the bond that connected us, for the love that had brought us together. The sun beat down on the roof of the Explorer, turning the car into a greenhouse of sweat and hope. The baby was born, but the ordeal wasn't over yet. I had to make sure she was okay, and I needed help. That's when Marie stepped in again, her calm presence a lifeline in the churning sea of my emotions. She checked the baby's breathing, her heart rate, her little reflexes, and reassured me that everything seemed perfect. I couldn't have been more grateful for that weathered, strong-willed woman who stopped to help a stranger in the middle of nowhere. She cleaned the baby, wrapped her in a blanket, and waited patiently while I recovered from the physical shock of childbirth. "She's beautiful," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I don't know what I would have done without her," I said, reaching out to touch the baby's tiny hand. Marie smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Sometimes on this job, you meet all kinds of folks, ma'am. Some good, some bad. You and your little one deserve all the help you can get." She paused, looking out at the endless highway. "You got yourself a brave little fighter there. Now, you hold on to her and get yourself together. I'm gonna flag down that trucker up ahead. See if he can give us a lift into town." And with that, she was gone, disappearing into the shimmering heat haze. Moments later, a burly man in a faded trucker cap was kneeling beside the car, his face creased with concern. "Where's the nearest hospital?" he asked, Marie scribbling something on a piece of paper. "About 20 miles up the road, Richard," she said, handing it to him. "Can you take us, please? We just need a ride for these two ladies." Richard glanced at me and the baby, then back at Marie. "Sure thing," he said with a nod. And with that, he was on his way, his big rig rumbling back down the highway. Marie returned to my side, her presence a calming influence in the maelstrom of my thoughts. "Your baby's fine, ma'am," she said, gently squeezing my hand. "And you're doing better now, aren't you?" She helped me settle the baby, then sat down on the bumper of the Explorer. "Tell me your name," she asked. And just for the record, "I'm Marie Truman." "I'm Ella Montgomery," I replied, surprised by the sudden rush of tears. "Marie, you saved us. Without you, I don't know what would have happened." Marie's eyes twinkled with amusement. "Don't you start that. I was just doing what anyone would have done," she said with a wave of her hand. "Besides," she added with a wink, "a girl's gotta stick up for other girls, especially when they're in labor in the middle of nowhere." "Are you all right?" she asked, voice low and steady. Her Kentucky drawl was warm, like molasses. I was too stunned to speak, so I nodded, blinking against the brightness. Another contraction seized me, and I clutched at the edge of the steering wheel. "Sweetheart, you look like you're about to give birth right here," she said, pressing two fingers to my wrist to check my pulse. "Let me help you. My rig's got a first aid kit and blankets." She paused. "You got a name for this little one?" Ellie Rose?" I gasped, blinking back tears. "Ellie Rose Montgomery," she repeated, as if tasting the name. "Well, Ellie Rose is coming out whether we like it or not. Let's get you out of here." She reached through the open window, her hands steady and unflinching, and helped me slide out of the seat. My legs trembled like saplings in a storm. She supported me under my arm, guiding me around to the passenger side. The moment I was free of the door jamb, another crushing contraction doubled me over, and I screamed her name until the dessert answered with silence. Marie laid a soft blanket over the gravel, then scooped me into her arms as easily as if I weighed nothing. I wrapped my arms around her neck, burying my face into her shoulder. She called 911 on her cell phone, then pressed her thumb over the speaker so I wouldn't hear her calmly repeat a list of medical instructions. The second call she made was to a friend of hers in Flagstaff, someone who worked at the hospital. And within 20 minutes, 2 EMT trucks roared up behind her Peterbilt. I was loaded onto a stretcher like a precious cargo, still squeezing Marie's hand until my fingers turned white. In the back of the ambulance, the lights flashed in chaotic patterns, and the paramedic, a woman named Alyssa, asked me questions I barely comprehended. When did your water break? How far apart are your contractions? She checked my vitals and then, without judgment, told me we were heading to Flagstaff Medical Center, 30 miles north. The ride felt eternal. Every bump in the road jolted me into new agony, and every blink brought me closer to the moment I had been preparing for my entire adult life. Yet, somehow, I felt a flicker of gratitude for the blade of luck that put Marie on my path that afternoon. If it wasn't for her, I might never have left that car alive. We arrived at the hospital in the golden light of late afternoon. The entrance loomed tall and modern, with glass doors reflecting the desert sky. I was whisked through corridors by burly EMTs who wore expressions of professional concern. Doctors and nurses swooped in, their voices hushed but precise. A nurse introduced herself as Tasha, short for Natasha, but she insisted on Tasha and ushered me into a delivery suite painted a soothing shade of pale blue. They helped me onto the bed, and the room filled with soft beeps from the monitors. The bed felt like a lifeline beneath me. The head nurse, Dr. Malik, checked Ellie's heartbeat and managed to coax me into a position that relieved some pressure. But relief was a luxury I couldn't afford. The pain was a physical entity, a living thing that consumed every atom of my being. Through it all, Marie stood at the foot of the bed, her arms crossed but her eyes never leaving mine. She whispered encouragement, told me how strong I was, how many women had come through this and lived to tell the tale. She talked about her own kids, 3 of them, all delivered on the road in various truck stops and motels. You women, she said, her voice thick with emotion, you're tougher than any man on this planet. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't breathe. I could only nod and gasp and push with every ounce of strength left in me. At exactly 6:17 p.m., a soft, wet cry filled the room like music. I felt the sting of tears as they welled up behind my eyes. They placed a squalling, red-faced bundle on my chest, and I collapsed into sobs of relief and disbelief. She was perfect 10 fingers, 10 toes, a round, squishy head covered in dark hair that curled like cinnamon sticks. She's beautiful, I managed to whisper, pressing my cheek against Ellie's tiny skull. She sure is, Tasha said, eyes bright. You did amazing, doctor. Malik handed me a bill for the delivery for $1,200 before insurance. I managed a shaky laugh and whispered a quick thank you to the universe for the $1,500 deductible I could cover with the little nest egg Caleb and I had saved. I knew I'd have to spend the next year budgeting every dollar, but none of that mattered anymore. In that moment, I was just a mother. After they cleaned me up and transferred Ellie to a warming bassinet, I asked for water. Marie and Tasha pressed a cup into my hand as I sat on the edge of the bed, fragile and terrified of every movement. I looked around at the room, at the pale blue walls, the fluorescent lights, the bundle of medical instruments, and realized I had crossed some invisible boundary. I was no longer just a woman with plans and promises. I was a mother who had fought her way into the world for her child, and that battle had changed me forever. Marie squeezed my shoulder. I've got to get back on the road, she said quietly. Faithful Betsy, her Peterbilt, can't haul itself. She paused, then bent down to press a kiss to the top of Ellie's head. Take care of her, all right? Take care of you. She handed me a folded piece of paper. My phone number. Call me if you need anything, even if it's just to talk. I nodded, clutching the paper like a lifeline. My chest felt too tight to speak. She slipped out of the room before I could say thank you properly. I watched her disappear down the corridor, a guardian angel in denim overalls, leaving me with a brand new life and a mountain of questions. Caleb had missed it. His parents, stranded at that rented house in Sedona, missed it too. But here in this pale blue room, among strangers who had become my lifeline, I felt the first stirrings of something stronger than betrayal or fear. I felt hope, and somewhere inside me, I whispered, "Welcome to the world, Ellie Rose Montgomery." When I returned to Nashville with Ellie swaddled tightly against my chest, the house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt haunted, not by spirits or shadows, but by something heavier absence. Every corner echoed with the memory of what was supposed to be. The bassinet Caleb built with his own hands sat untouched in the nursery, still wrapped in cellophane. The "It's a Girl" banner I tacked above the window fluttered slightly in the breeze coming through a cracked pane, like it was waving goodbye. Caleb hadn't come back to Nashville after the birth. Not even for a day. No phone call. No visit. Just one measly text. 3 days after I was discharged from Flagstaff Medical. "Glad you're okay. Need time to think." I read that message sitting on the edge of our marital bed, wearing hospital-issued mesh underwear and holding Ellie in my arms while she suckled, oblivious to her father's absence. I stared at those words for what felt like hours, waiting for them to rearrange themselves into something human, something loving. But they didn't. They just sat there like an insult on my screen. I didn't reply. What was there to say? I spent 2 more weeks in that house too long, aching weeks full of feeding schedules, cluster cries, and tiptoeing past the memories embedded in the walls. I tried to keep the routine going, cooked a few meals I didn't eat, ran the washer, and folded onesies with shaking hands. I left Caleb's boots by the door, half hoping they'd walk away on their own. Every time Ellie whimpered at night, I'd imagine what it would have been like to wake Caleb beside me, to pass her over to his arms so I could catch 2 hours of sleep. But instead, it was always just me and her, a mother and a daughter, and the heavy silence of a man who had chosen distance over duty. By the time Ellie was 6 weeks old, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to raise her in a house filled with what-ifs and ghosted promises. I called a real estate agent, Melanie Rhodes, who had helped us buy the house 2 years earlier. She sounded surprised to hear from me so soon. I told her the truth. I was leaving, and I needed to do it quickly. The market was still hot, and we walked away with $108,000 in profit. Enough for a new start. Enough to stop waiting for someone who had made his decision the moment he drove off that desert road. I left the keys on the kitchen counter, along with a note addressed to Caleb. "If you ever come back, you won't find us here. We deserve better." My sister, Lena, had always warned me about Caleb. She said he was the kind of man who knew how to look right into your soul, but never stayed long enough to help carry the weight of it. She lived in Savannah, Georgia, just outside the historic district, in a breezy yellow house with an overgrown garden and wind chimes that sang like laughter. I called her the same day I signed the closing papers. She didn't hesitate. "Pack your bags, Ray," she said. "We'll make space." Savannah was everything Nashville WASN single quotes T dot slower dot softer. A little sun-dazed and forgiving. It felt like an exhale after a 2-year breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I rented a small 2-bedroom apartment on the 2nd floor of a converted Victorian home. On Jones Street, the kind of street you'd see on a postcard. All moss-covered trees and brick-lined sidewalks. The landlord, a retired librarian named Miss Carolyn, lived below me and brought up peach cobbler my first night in. "For the new mama," she said, placing the dish in my hands like it was sacred. "You look like you could use something warm." She was right. I hadn't eaten anything homemade in weeks. I poured the money from the house into making the new place feel like our own. Nothing extravagant, just pieces of comfort. I bought a white crib with soft gray rails and painted Ellie's nursery yellow and cream. I hung tiny cloud decals on the walls and placed a rocking chair near the window that overlooked a weeping willow tree. Every inch of that room felt like hope painted over heartbreak. I remember the first time Ellie laughed in that room. Really laughed, not a gurgle or a hiccup, but a full-bellied giggle that rolled up from her tiny chest and bounced off the nursery walls like bells. I had just changed her diaper and was blowing raspberries on her belly, and she let out this wild, uninhibited laugh that startled me. I froze for a second, blinking. Then I laughed too. We both did, loud and long, and I swear the whole house felt warmer. That laugh, that moment, was when I realized something deep and true. I had survived. We had survived. Despite everything. Despite being left in a car, alone. Despite the aching loneliness of that hospital room. Despite Caleb's vanishing act. We had made it. And I was doing it. Not perfectly. Not without tears. But I was doing it. I started rebuilding myself, one day at a time. I found a remote content writing job with a nonprofit that supported single mothers $63,000 a year, plus health benefits and a flexible schedule. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me purpose. I'd write grants and blog posts while Ellie napped beside me in her bouncer, a pacifier bobbing in her tiny mouth. I'd take breaks to hold her, to smell that sweet baby scent, and remind myself that this little girl saved me from staying stuck in a life that was never real to begin with. Sometimes I still think about Caleb not with longing, but with clarity. I wonder if he ever tells people about the daughter he abandoned, or if he rewrites that story in his head. Maybe he tells himself I didn't need him. Maybe that makes it easier for him to sleep at night. But I know the truth. He missed it. He missed her first smile. Her first word, which was mama. Her first step, wobbly and perfect, across our living room rug while I clapped like she'd just won a medal. There are still moments when the grief sneaks in. When I see a dad at the park lifting his toddler onto his shoulders, or when Ellie asks why she doesn't have a daddy like the other kids, I tell her, as gently as I can, that some people aren't strong enough to stay, but that she and I are. Because we are. Every time she giggles in that yellow nursery, I feel the strength of every woman who's ever chosen herself and her child over waiting for someone else to show up. And in those moments, I know we are not broken. We are just beginning. Now, as I sit here at the small writing desk in the corner of my Savannah apartment, sunlight pouring through gauzy curtains and the quiet rustle of wind chimes coming from Miss Carolyn's porch downstairs, I realize something that still takes my breath away. I made it. Not in the grand, Hollywood kind of way. There were no dramatic makeovers, no overnight transformations, no poetic justice served hot. Just a quiet, steady fight to stand tall again. But I made it. Ellie is 3 now. She has my hair dark and wavy, with a stubborn curl at the ends and Caleb's dimples, which I try not to think too hard about. She loves blueberries, thunderstorms, and pretending that the living room is a jungle. Every morning she wakes me up with her tiny hand patting my cheek, whispering, "Mama, is it sunshine time?" She still doesn't understand what clocks mean, but she understands mornings and joy and the sound of birdsong outside our window. I make $63,000 a year working as a content manager for a nonprofit here in Savannah Mothers United. We create resources for single moms, help with legal services, housing assistance, resume writing, even crisis counseling. I write their blog posts, their newsletters, the monthly donor letters. Sometimes it feels like I'm just typing into a void. Other times, I get emails from women thanking us for the hotline number or the rent assistance directory I pulled together. And I realize this work matters. It matters because we do. Because women like me exist, and we deserve more than survival. We deserve to live. There are still hard days. Nights when Ellie's cough keeps me awake, and I sit on the bathroom floor watching her sleep through the baby monitor, praying it's nothing serious. There are days when the bills stack up faster than I expected, when the car won't start, or when I have to say no to something simple like ice cream because payday is still a week away. But I have a system now. I know how to stretch $20. I know how to fix a leaky faucet. I know where to find community. And I know how to be alone. That might sound like a sad thing, but it isn't. Learning how to be alone was how I became a woman again. Not a wife, not a daughter-in-law, not a second thought. Just me. Ray Montgomery, 31 years old. Mother. Writer. Survivor. Soft when I want to be, sharp when I need to be. I don't know where Caleb is anymore. Last I heard through one of those small-town whispers that somehow find their way across state lines. He moved to a coastal town in Oregon with a woman named Claire. Apparently, she's a yoga instructor and owns a rescue dog named Zephyr. I don't know if he ever tells her about Ellie. I doubt it. Caleb always preferred a clean slate. Easier to pretend nothing came before. There was a time I wanted revenge. Not the kind with slashed tires or bitter voicemails, but the kind where he'd wake up one day and realize everything he missed. Ellie's first steps, her squeal when she spots a butterfly, the way she says I love you more than toast before bed. He missed the late night feedings, the lullabies in the rocker, the tears and the tiny victories that no one claps for but matter more than anything for a while. I wanted him to feel that absence like I did, but I've let go of that now. I had to. Carrying that anger was like dragging chains behind me every step of the way. I don't need him to understand the weight of what he gave up. I just need to be the one who didn't. Sometimes, in the quietest parts of the day, I go back to that moment on the side of the highway alone in that Ford Explorer, sweat dripping down my temple, one hand on my stomach and the other clutching the steering wheel. I remember thinking, this might be the moment I fall apart. But I didn't. I didn't fall apart. I endured. And when Marie appeared with her dusty truck and her kind, steady hands, it was like the universe sent me proof that there would always be someone somewhere who saw me, even when the one person who was supposed to didn't. I've kept in touch with Marie. We exchange postcards. She sends Ellie tiny trucker hats from different states and writes notes in blocky capital letters like, "Don't let this little one forget she's a road warrior." Ellie calls her Auntie Marie, even though they've only met twice since that day. But that's the thing about people who show up when it matters. You don't forget them, ever. The yellow nursery has slowly transformed. Ellie has a toddler bed now, shaped like a race car, and walls covered in finger paintings and glow-in-the-dark stars. She calls it her sky room, because I told her once that brave girls live among the stars. She asked if I was brave too, and I told her the truth. I had to be, I said, because I had you. And that's it, really. That's the story. Not the one I thought I'd write when Caleb and I stood in our wedding clothes, under a canopy of oak trees in Franklin. Not the one I planned while folding onesies and writing letters to an unborn child in a house. That no longer belongs to us. But it's mine. It's full of scraped knees and late-night breakdowns, of strangers turned angels and small victories no one else sees. It's the story of learning to live without a safety net, of rebuilding identity from the rubble of someone else's choices. It's motherhood not wrapped in vows or filters, but in real, raw, tireless love. This life I've built with cracked tiles and laughter and bills paid just on. Time isn't perfect, but it's honest, it's full, it's fiercely, defiantly mine. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes it beautiful. Because I was there, in that car, in that hospital, in that nursery, on that apartment floor at 2 a.m., with a sick baby and no idea what to do, but trying anyway. I was there for all of it, and I'll be there for whatever comes next.